All right. Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. It is time for yet another A World Away read along. With me, of course, is your happy, peppy, chattering magpie and the rest of the mischief. Hello, gang. Hello, mischief. How are you all?
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
I ask as if I haven't been talking to them for the past couple of minutes, and then a few hours ago we had a watch party. We watched the first of several Christmas movies that we're going to be watching this December together. We watched Klaus, not Klaus, as in like the Klaus. Klaus, the Netflix movie Klaus. I don't know if you guys have seen it before, but I certainly had fun watching that today, and I hope you guys did too, those who hadn't seen it before.
It was so
I
beautiful.
did indeed.
It was the ending is heartbreaking.
Yes, without going into any spoilers, it was heartbreaking and beautiful, of course, because that's my sort of jam. So, speaking of heartbreaking, let's talk about we don't have early gang comments today because, well, sometimes this happens. So let's just go straight into the
story.
Yeah, I did schedule this late like a few minutes ago, so that's why we don't have any YouTube chat. But so that just means that we just jump straight into the TLDR of this of what happened in the last read along. You guys remember what happened? Some highlights?
Well, one of my favorite highlights is Eckhart finally opened up to Myne about a little bit about Hartmut and his unborn child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then there was Karsten and Elvira's talk, and Christine's name has already appeared.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Karsten is contemplating or is actually pursuing her as his third wife. He's like, yeah, there's still a few months until the summer. I'm like, what is going on in the summer? I wonder, Karsten, what happens in the summer, you guys?
I wonder what happens.
So, I wonder. That son of a gun.
I wonder if we're gonna see Christine in the future and like she would actually get to interact with Myne. I'm curious about that.
Yes, well, read along and find out. Yes, what?
In which case, I hope that she sees Rosina and laments her not taking Rosina from the temple.
Right?
Yes.
Poor Rosina. Oh. Yeah, but Rosina deserves a better mistress, which she does have in mind. So ultimately, it all worked for the best. So yay. Well, we'll see if we see Christine. We'll see. I can't say anything. But we do have a little bit of name droppings, which I really like, just mentioning random characters, just like in an offhand kind of way. But us that have read canon, we're like, ooh, making connections. Whereas in that world, it's just like, okay, whatever. So far, we have seen some characters from canon already here. We've had, of course, Angelica, who somehow managed to become also Myne's attendant / guard knight here. We also have Feline in her midst, Roderick as well, Cornelius, for better or not, it's been for worse, for better or worse. And who is another character? A certain character that also is mentioned here, and which we will be talking about this. Hartmut. All right. So I actually wanted to talk about Hartmut quite a bit, but after the events of chapter 54, which is called Broken Rhythm, the readers, they were like, we don't care about the interludes. We just want to know what happened with Eckhart and Myne, and that they will be okay. So I had to wait like several months before I wrote this interlude with Hartmut to fill in the background of, all of these events, but in his point of view. And also in the next
interlude.
interlude. So then that's what we're delving into. So this is gonna go like way to the very beginning almost. So I do hope you enjoy it, and thank you again to all of you. Stop it, Yukihime. It's not an interlude. It's an interlude. Jeez.
She said what I was trying to say.
Yeah, she
There's
basically just
absolutely-
said what Patrick was
there's-
saying.
Why are you guys? This is
Why are we like this?
This is why we can't
Because
have
you
nice
don't.
things. This is why we can't have nice
mean,
things. That's why I can't
how
read
long have we-
chapters.
It's
How long
it's
have-
a very nice thing. It's a very nice thing.
Jeez. Whoever's spraying them, thank you.
Magpie, how long have we been doing this together, Magpie? You know this one now.
Why do I always hope that you guys will behave? All right, enough with the spraying, whoever it is.
When have we ever behaved, Magpie?
All right.
I came here to be a misfit, not to like be nice.
Okay. Well, I guess that's just my fate. Well, I shall take it up with the air of a martyr. All right.
We are going to get muted by the end of the video here.
I hope
people.
not, you
Maybe.
guys. I hope not. Please don't make my
I've
my
already
time more
gotten
difficult.
muted already today.
All
I
right.
don't need another one.
So, just mute yourself if you're not reading, okay? That's all I ask. All right. So today,
But before we get into this, I'm sorry, Magpie.
What's up?
I need to do some shilling for you.
here we go.
If you enjoy our antics, please consider liking and subscribing. And if you want to join in and annoy your
Please
Empress
don't. Magpie.
Please don't.
Empress Magpie,
Don't give them ideas, please.
please join the Ko-fi. Give her the money so she'll put up with you more readily.
Oh yeah, that will help. I do have a higher tolerance for my supporters, so there we go. All right. So, by the way, just want to report we have heard back from Red Tempest and his family. So, sorry for the confusion when we first heard. It was I misheard or something happened, crossed wires. But yeah, it's our very own Red Tempest who we just have to keep in our thoughts and prayers so that he can have a speedy recovery and get back
Smooth
to
and
us
speedy
soon.
recovery.
Yes. So, Red, if you're listening, this reading is dedicated to you because we love you and we want you to get back on your feet and get back to us.
Concentrate on getting better, buddy.
Yes.
You want to see you healthy, nice, and ready to continue memeing all the events on this Discord.
That's right. So everybody send your love and your in the emojis. I am sending a tempest of hearts.
Send all the hearts,
Send
guys.
all the hearts to Red Tempest.
Would that be a red tempest of hearts?
It would indeed be a Red Tempest of hearts. All right. So you guys, are you ready to read the next chapter? Let's do this. This is the long-awaited Hartmut interlude. And today reading
Hartmut POV.
Yeah. The today reading is going to be Yukihime will be reading Myne, JC Fergie will be reading Ferdinand, Emmy will be reading Eustace, Teal will be reading Dolores, Patrick will be reading Hartmut, Emmy will be reading Christopher, JC Fergie will be reading Cornelius, Hartmut's attendant will be read by Emmy, and Bernard will be read by JC Fergie. All right, peeps, let's do this. And by the way, thank you to Hirami, who did the highlighting for this monster of a chapter. It's a long one, but I hope you enjoy it, you guys. All right. Chapter 75, Interlude. Title, Revelations, a Hartmut POV. The promised Hartmut interlude, what he's been up to, how his view of mine has changed over time, and some more Dolores craziness. Caught up in the trivial matters of the aristocratic world, Hartmut felt an unbearable sense of boredom. But one fateful afternoon, everything changed, and his life took an unexpected turn. He was at his family's mansion, complaining to anyone who would listen about his mundane existence and the repetitive nature of his daily routine, which seemed destined to drive him insane.
I just don't understand.
he said, lounging on the settee in the parlor.
I don't understand why Herscher reneged on her agreement to recommend me to become a sovereignty scholar. Yet, what is it I hear? She has recommended a med noble for Arnsbach? Or from Arnsbach? A lousy med noble? Are you even listening to me, Dolores?
Dolores murmured distractedly from her writing desk as she busied herself with something or other.
I think I've listened to you curse out this woman for years now, but I still don't understand why you're so desperate to become a sovereign noble. It seems awful over there.
Hartmut couldn't explain it himself either. It's not like he had a burning desire to become a sovereign noble. He just simply craved, deep down, a sense of purpose, a challenge, something greater than the confines of his dull routine in Ehrenfest. Despite his job administering a major industry for Lady Charlotte, the future Ob, he was still unsatisfied. And the only hope he could now cling to was that, by moving to Drownshell to spread the printing industry, he'd maybe find what he was looking for there. It would take time for him to move to that duchy, though, so until it was time to leave Ehrenfest, all he could do was look for ways to relieve his boredom. Therefore, when he learned of Dolores' scheme to go to the Lay Nobles district, and Cornelius proposed investigating the rumors surrounding Lord Eckhart's water goddess, he eagerly agreed. Though uninterested in aristocratic gossip, Hartmut wondered if maybe Dolores was onto something. Plus, his best friend also had a grievance against the lady.
I can't believe my brother would stoop so low as to embrace a commoner-born water goddess and set her up in the nobles' quarters.
Cornelius had complained loudly to him.
And at his master's command, too. How humiliating.
Hartmut sympathized with his friend. He supposed that having a pretty low-born plaything must have its appeal, but there were limits to what noblemen could do without rumors spreading, especially with regards to temple wretches. To actually set one up in an estate within the nobles' district was sheer lunacy. No one ever did that. Hartmut hadn't expected much. The water goddess was supposed to be a mere concubine, another man's pretty plaything, an insignificant obstacle in the way of his sister's happiness. Yet the very moment Hartmut laid eyes on the one known as Myne, he could have sworn that lightning had struck him where he stood. His life changed forever. Hartmut was captivated by her beauty, yet he felt something more profound, an inexplicable connection that sparked a surge of emotions that stirred his very core. He could have remained rooted where he stood had not Dolores and Cornelius bumped into him and broken him out of his reverie. Coming back to his senses, Hartmut had hated himself for letting himself be bewitched by a pretty face. He struggled against these emotions, trying to convince himself it was just a passing crush, like admiring a pretty flower in a garden. But no matter how he tried to ignore it, his heart still raced with feelings he couldn't control. In his attempt to suppress his emotions, he ended up behaving badly and encouraging Cornelius to stir up trouble. Cornelius had done too good of a job, however, and it all ended up crushed. Face to face with the goddess and confronted with a power that he realized was far greater and stronger than his own, Hartmut experienced an overwhelming mix of terror and ecstasy. This encounter left him with the inexplicable conviction that he had been in the presence of a divine being. Yet in spite of the danger, his heart remained ablaze with an intense yearning that defied all logic and refused to fade away as the days passed. Determined to unravel the mystery surrounding the goddess, Hartmut embarked on a journey to understand the inexplicable force that had gripped him. Something told him that maybe, just maybe, he could find what he had so long been waiting for, not in the sovereignty or in some other duchy, but within the very confines of his own city. After gathering as much intelligence about the tea shop and its proprietors, Hartmut discovered some surprising connections between the goddess and the printing industry. Determined to work alongside her and observe her further, he devised a clever plan and used bureaucratic tricks to hide his desire behind piles of paperwork and official rules. Step by step, he worked towards his goal, until at last he was summoned by Lady Charlotte, who looked upon him tensely, but nevertheless delivered the oh-so-terrible news that he was going to be sent to a new workshop, and his pay was going to be docked for a season. Getting a pay cut was unfortunate, but Hartmut hardly counted it as a loss. He was willing to sacrifice much more for the sake of drawing closer to the enigmatic figure who had captured his fascination. In fact, it was hard to keep from smirking as he met the pitying, yet also secretly delighted glances of his fellow scholars, who were eager to steal his place during his absence. Meanwhile, Christoph, the other scholar who was also going on the assignment, watched Hartmut quietly. His eyes spoke volumes, showing his determination to outdo Hartmut in their competition to impress Lady Charlotte.
There's more at stake here than a measly Druinchill business.
When they first presented themselves at the goddesses, she had them meet her in the disgusting temple of all places. However, Hartmut never saw any of the filth that he had expected to see. The workshop they were shown was not only well run, but also incredibly profitable. Shocking Hartmut. Even more surprising were the ledgers they were shown. Despite being much smaller than the operations run by scholars like Hartmut and Christoph, this place, run by great priests, was outperforming them all by a wide margin. Hartmut couldn't fathom how he, a respected art scholar, was falling behind these common people managing the temple workshop. It was unbearable, especially when the goddess pointed out that nobles like him often overlooked the knowledge and skills of ordinary folk.
You may try to push and set whatever deadlines you want,
she said, looking at them coldly.
But failure only awaits those who trace plans without taking into account vital information about the state of the market, supplies, and the wellness of the workers.
The wellness of the workers?
Hartmut murmured, raising an eyebrow only to be speared by a look from the diminutive goddess. He literally felt a shock at being at the receiving end of her angry glare.
Yes,
she said.
Don't forget, those workers are your hands and feet. You should at least respect and care for them.
Another time she told him that.
Unless you get your hands dirty, you are not fit to run a workshop.
Hartmut and Christoph had stared at her dumbfounded, and she rolled her eyes impatiently.
I know you mostly deal with the cash flow and report to the castle on production, but you need to do more than that. I want you to build a relationship with suppliers, merchants, and workers so that when a problem arises, you will know how to solve things and have built enough good faith with merchants so that they may feel free to offer solutions. Just think of the situation that we had 2 years ago with the Rinsham oil.
Hartmut remembered that. It had been a disaster when the expected oil shipments from Frembeltag had not come in after a frost had ruined most of the Marzellis used to extract the oil that Ehrenfest relied on for both Rinsham and printing ink. As a result, the cost of producing 2 of Ehrenfest's most important products had gone up at the most inopportune time, during the 6 months leading up to the Archduke Conference. As Ehrenfest couldn't host merchants, it did most of its business deals during the Archduke Conference, and in the small window between the Archduke Conference and the Interduchy Tournament was all they had to produce vast amounts of products. They had brokered deals and received payments from the sovereignty and several major duchies to deliver crates upon crates of Rinsham and printed goods. Yet Ehrenfest had faced a major, catastrophic oil shortage.
Yes.
Christoph said slowly, rubbing his chin as he remembered the event.
But in the end, Lady Charlotte contracted the Erifas merchants and acquired from them the oil necessary for projects to continue.
True, but if I recall correctly, it was due in no small thanks to the commoner guildmaster that our workshops were able to make to make the switch so quickly. He is the one who anticipated trouble in the oil market, took the initiative to do something about it at Ehrenfest, and even before meeting with Lady Charlotte, he directed the workshops in the city to prepare to produce much, much more of it.
Hartmut blinked in surprise. He hadn't known about this, and he prided himself on knowing everything he could that related to the printing industry.
But it wasn't the guildmaster who rescued the industry. It was Lady Charlotte. She had established a strong connection with the guildmaster, allowing swift changes without wasting months on formalities and paperwork. To put it simply, if Lady Charlotte managed the duchy industries the way you oversee the printing workshops, things would have turned out very differently.
I knew it. I knew there was more to her than being a mere tea shop keeper.
Hartmut felt a secret thrill inside him. After weeks of chasing leads that went nowhere, he had finally found proof that the goddess was deeply involved in Ehrenfest's industries. The way she spoke confirmed his suspicion that she was a true force behind their recent progress. People believed Lady Charlotte's mentor, Lord Ferdinand, was the mastermind, but what if the real guide behind her temple correspondence had been the goddess all along? It was a thought that sent excitement tingling down Hartmut's spine. Christoph, though, was much less excited. He took a deep breath.
So you're saying that you want us not only to study how this workshop operates, but also to talk to the merchants, workers, and others?
Exactly.
She smiled.
Take advantage of this wonderful opportunity. I hope you appreciate that a valuable learning experience. What a valuable learning experience this is for you. Not just to learn from the merchants that visit our workshop, but also from my Gutenbergs. They are the most gifted of all of Evenfest's artisans.
The first few days proved to be a daunting challenge for Hartmut, as he found himself thrust into an entirely unfamiliar environment, the temple, governed by its own unique set of rules. They were explicitly told to show respect to the workers, with strict warnings against any inappropriate behavior, especially towards the female workers who were fiercely protected by Lady Myne. On top of that, Hartmut always felt like watchful eyes were upon him. It was unnerving and would have been mentally exhausting to individuals with less mental fortitude than he. However, he shrugged it off and bided his time and an opportunity to approach the goddess. Yet, he was never granted such an opportunity. Not when she was accompanied by Lord Eckhart at all times. The man practically snarled at him any time Hartmut happened to catch his eye, and certainly not when she never even deigned to glance in his direction. Hartmut couldn't help but find the whole situation absurd and comical. It wasn't comical, however, when the goddess crushed him after a mishap with one of her precious young scholars, a med noble called Roderick. The way Hartmut saw it, the med noble had been far too full of himself and had forgotten his station. Why did he get to have meetings with Lady Myne? Why did she seem to dote on him so much? He was no one special, especially compared to Hartmut, who was far superior in every respect. Hartmut's heart filled with envy, and he'd seen fit to put the med noble in his place, much as he had used to do back at school. But Lady Myne had immediately put an end to that and scolded him in front of everyone.
You are the one that needs to remember their place,
she said coldly, her rainbow-hued eyes blazing with cold fury.
You pull another stunt like that, and beg you go to Lady Charlotte. Understood?
Hartmut, unable to speak under the intense pressure of her crushing, barely managed to groan out a reply in the affirmative.
Good,
she said, before suddenly releasing the overwhelming grip her crushing had had on him. He gasped and came dangerously close to collapsing on the ground, but he took hold of a nearby desk and leaned against it as he recovered from such a tremendous crushing, while she turned on her heel and walked out, with Kristoff following behind her. Neither one bothered to glance his way to see if he was okay, nor did anyone offer him a sympathetic word. The truth stared Hartmut in the face. The goddess hated him, and earning her trust was likely next to an impossible goal. He was already starting from the very bottom, or maybe even lower than that. It was evident that her obsession with looking after the well-being and happiness of every single one of her employees and workers, no matter how menial they were, did not extend to him. As far as it went, he ranked even lower than the most miserable of temple wretches. Yet, while the whole experience should have had any other noble turning tail and quitting, or worse, swearing revenge, Hartmut was merely more determined to know and understand more about the goddess. The crushing had been painful and humiliating, yet she'd brought him once more to that exhilarating point where the agony, the burning, the squeezing of the heart, and the certainty that he was only a step away from the towering staircase stirred something in him. It had been nothing short of glorious, and his need to understand such power only increased. He needed to know more and more and more about the goddess. However, it was clear that his investigation wouldn't progress much further. That same day, he got a message from Lord Ferdinand.
Sign this magical contract
The Ob's younger brother said,
and agree to certain stipulations if you wish to continue your terms of employment with Lady Myne.
Hartmut scanned the terms of the parchment he'd been presented with. They were, in short, unreasonable. He frowned and looked up, meeting Lord Ferdinand's cold gaze.
And if I refuse?
He asked. Lord Ferdinand's response was as cold as his stare.
In that case, consider this your immediate termination. You will no longer have any connection with Myne or her business associates.
He steepled his fingers, wearing an evil grin.
Eustace has informed me of your attempts to gather information. Understand that this ban goes beyond the printing industry. You are also prohibited from accessing other vital air-infest industries. Needless to say, you'll lose all workshop management roles.
Hartmut felt his throat go dry. He was on the brink of losing everything. It got worse. Cornelius's brother, who had been standing quietly behind his lord, cleared his throat pointedly, causing Lord Ferdinand's mouth to quirk up in amusement, though his eyes remained as cold as ever.
Oh yes. If you've refused to sign this contract, Eckhart will break every bone in your body.
Hartmut gasped in shock. They were joking, right? There was no way they would harm him in such a way.
Don't worry, Lord Hartmut.
Lord Eustace spoke beside him in a reassuring tone as he set refreshments and a steaming teacup in front of Hartmut with utmost courtesy.
We will ensure you are patched up and walking before sending you back to your state. After all, allowing Eckhart to have his way and send you up the towering staircase would be excessively cruel.
And so, Hartmut signed away his soul that very afternoon.
A wise choice.
Lord Ferdinand said as the flames from the contract faded away.
One of my retainers will contact you shortly to settle your share of the expenses incurred at the tea shop, which includes compensating for any potential lost business. You may go.
Hartmut pursed his lips as he considered what would happen next. Cornelius could take care of himself, but his sister was a different matter.
I shall undertake the responsibility for my sister's share in this matter. I feel a profound sense of duty for the events that transpired. Therefore, I beseech you not to trouble yourself with reaching out to her concerning this affair.
Lord Ferdinand stared at him for a moment, his golden gaze cold and inscrutable, before he finally gave in.
Fine, if that is what you want.
He said.
But remember, if we ever find that your sister poses a threat to Lady Myne, she will be handled in a similar manner.
Hartmut left the place, studiously ignoring to the very end the glowering archknight who still seemed to thirst for his blood. All in all, he was grateful that he was able to make it back home in one piece. But at what cost? Although he was an archnoble, he was a third son. He couldn't afford to stop working. Signing the contract was the only choice he'd had, but the weight of the debt he'd just taken on made him feel hopeless. What had he been thinking?
My lord, will you want dinner tonight?
His attendant asked as Hartmut arrived home, drenched from the rain.
No, nothing. I'm going to bed directly,
Hartmut said, suddenly overwhelmed with exhaustion. As he lay in bed, listening to the rain and the wind outside, doubt crept into his heart, chilling his body and soul. Perhaps he had embarked on a fool's errand. Maybe he was wrong to be so obsessed with learning more about the goddess. He had heard of men who enjoyed pain. Maybe Hartmut was one of them? Perhaps he was so bored that he found pleasure in the allure of danger and death? These thoughts raced through his mind, leaving him questioning his own nature and his desires. The night was long, cold and dreary, and the possibility of a bleak winter ahead, with reduced pay, a mountain of debt, and nothing to show for it, made sleep difficult. The days dragged on, and Hartmut felt no closer to getting near the goddess. It was endlessly frustrating. Hadn't he signed a contract that made it impossible for him to harm Lady Myne in any way? Then why was he still under constant surveillance? Why wasn't he allowed to talk or even be in the same room as her? The barrier seemed insurmountable, and as he struggled to remember why he had been so fixated on a mere slip of a girl, his enthusiasm waned. He was in a foul mood when he visited his family home at the end of the week. He had not been a good brother to Dolores either, and had goaded and mocked her as he had helped her practice her harshspiel. She had soldiered through with tears in her eyes and hate blazing in her eyes, all the while, but in the end she succeeded, much to Hartmut's satisfaction. However, far from being grateful, his spoiled sister had tried to throw him out of his own family home. Enraged and still frustrated with his own situation, he had made his sister cry. In his anger, he had gone so far as to tie her up in bands of light, leaving her sobbing on the floor. Despite his cold demeanor, Hartmut had a soft spot for his little sister. He regretted his harsh treatment of her and made efforts to make amends. He served her tea, offered her favorite treats, and found solace in the moments when Dolores allowed him to spoil her. For that short moment in time, they were at peace and talked to each other like they'd used to before. Dolores had bemoaned the impossible tasks that Lady Elvira had set out for her, and Hartmut congratulated himself at having at least spared her from Lord Ferdinand's cold fury and chastisement.
Do your best then.
He said with a sigh.
If you want to be Lady Elvira's successor, you need to overcome this on your own.
You don't have to tell me that. I know Lady Elvira is testing me.
Dolores spat the words out.
I wish I could go back in time, you know?
Yes, Hartmut understood. He understood all too well. Sorry, guys. The two of them sat in silence, lost in their own thoughts, as they finished the tea and snacks. Once done, Hartmut called the attendant to take the tea things away and tidy the room after their heated altercation. He thought Dolores would retreat to her room to rest, but his fiery-tempered sister surprised him. With a mumbled thanks, she informed him that she intended to practice Haarspiel again until dinner time and requested to be left alone. Hartmut did as she asked, closing the door behind him. But instead of leaving and going downstairs, he stayed in the corridor. Crossing his arms, he leaned against the door, listening to the music emanating from the room. On the other side of the door, Dolores counted aloud and played. At first her fingers were clumsy on the instrument, but gradually the notes began to flow like a very slow stream. Despite occasional mistakes, she persisted, her determination keeping the melody steady and unwavering. Dolores was hot-headed, willful, stupidly proud, and infinitely stubborn. But if she was anything, she was determined, and in spite of her many setbacks, she always rose and achieved her goals, much like water eroding a boulder over time. As he stood there, Hartmut realized he could learn something from his determined little sister. Perhaps there was more to her strength than he had ever acknowledged. Hartmut had had enough of self-pity. In the days that followed, he threw himself into his work with unmatched determination. Even if he couldn't directly interact with the goddess, he knew there were other ways to pursue his goals. He was also determined not to let Kristoff get ahead of him. The fire of determination burned within him as he resolved to find alternative paths towards his objectives. His work led him to the lower city, where he encountered various merchants, heads of workshop, and business associates who seemed to be very well acquainted with the goddess. While Kristoff's noble sensitivities caused him to hang back from interacting, Hartmut took Lady Myne's lesson to heart and did his best to earn the commoner's trust. Even if it meant going against everything he believed in. It didn't matter. If the goddess said that this was what she expected of him, then he would do it. He pushed aside his reservations and embraced the unfamiliar, determined to follow the path she had set for him. Plus, they seemed to be talkative sorts, and once they got used to him, they inadvertently let slip tidbits of info he hadn't known before, and he learned, in bits and pieces, the story of the tiny girl from the slums who'd brought about a mercantile revolution in the lower city, and afterwards, the entire duchy. It was fascinating. The work actually began to be fun, as every day he saw or learned something new, while working in the lower city and temple. And not just about Lady Myne. Who would have thought that the commoners were so resourceful that they had come up with affordable ways to do things that in the Archduke's workshops required the use of expensive magic tools? It was like his narrow horizons were being broadened. Yet, it wasn't merely a one-sided learning experience. Hartmut also drew from his own wealth of experience in managing other workshops. As they set up the latest workshop in the goddess's residence, he actively contributed ideas to enhance its operations. He suggested innovative magical parts to expedite various processes and arranged for the schematics of the newly improved press from Forst to be sent over. The press had magic parts that the modified press used were relatively simple for an archnoble with an abundance of mana to craft, and Hartmut wasted no time in bringing them to Lady Myne's head scholar. He examined their purpose, and the bear-like scholar listened attentively, stroking his beard in understanding. Whatever Lord Bernard might think of Hartmut on a personal level, on a professional one, he seemed to recognize Hartmut's experience and agreed to present the plans and the tools to Lady Myne, and said he'd work closely with Hartmut to implement the changes if she agreed. Hartmut felt a surge of anticipation as he presented their proposal. This was the first time inside her office, and it had felt like ages since he'd been able to bask in her presence. He had caught glimpses of her in the days past, but now, facing her directly, he realized he hadn't been mistaken. There was something special about the goddess. For the first time since signing that blasted contract, he felt a sense of confidence, believing he had made the right decision. After they finished and answered the questions, Lady Myne sat in her chair, deep in thought, arms crossed as she pondered over the papers in front of her. Then, for the first time in a very long while, she turned her gaze toward Hartmut, and while her expression was almost skeptical, it appeared that she trusted Bernard's judgment. Despite her obvious reluctance, she nodded, agreed to their plan, and stood to leave as she had an appointment.
Excellent work.
She said with a small smile before she turned away.
With this, we can accelerate the date and we can start operating the workshop.
At that, Hartmut's anxiety melted away, replaced by a sense of accomplishment and euphoria.
She smiled at me. She did.
Nevertheless, that the single smile had never mind that the single smile had been directed at both he and Bernard. All that mattered was that he had finally broken through what he had thought had been an insurmountable divide. Here was hope that he could redeem himself and win her trust, and Hartmut was determined to continue proving his worth to her.
What are you plotting?
Lord Bernard said one day all of a sudden.
Excuse me?
Hartmut said, momentarily confused by the abrupt question at the Met scholar's pointed glare. Considering the weeks they had spent collaborating closely, the question really came out of nowhere, especially as they were in the middle of testing a magic circle that Hartmut had been slaving over for the past few days. The bear-like man frowned.
I'm trying to figure out why of the two arch scholars recommended by Lady Charlotte, it is you who are here on a precious Earth Day working on a project completely unrelated to the printing workshop.
Oh,
Hartmut said, smiling.
I see. Yes. I can tell why you'd be confused. Well, unlike Kristoff, I am the kind of scholar that cannot rest until I have perfected a task.
The other man raised an eyebrow and snorted.
Well then, I suppose we should test this one now. Are you really up to it, though? This is going to be your third rejuvenation potion.
I will be fine.
Hartmut chugged down his potion and gave the Met scholar his most refreshing smile, which predictably did not work on the other man. Hartmut didn't care to answer the other man's question, but he could see that the man had grounds for suspicion. No one in their right minds would come up to work on their day off without pay, use a ton of mana on making and perfecting prototypes, and use up valuable rejuvenation potions, all for a project that would yield them absolutely no benefit. Hartmut secretly smiled to himself. If only Bernard knew that he was willing to do all this and more, just to earn the goddess's favor. In this particular instance, Hartmut was working on perfecting a teleportation circle designed specifically for Lady Myne at her request. The circle was unique because it could transfer not only items but also individuals, a challenging task given that creating circles for transferring individuals was a skill limited only to Archduke candidates. Normally, such a feat would have been impossible. However, they have found a loophole in the magic. By exploiting this loophole and confining the transfer within a limited area, specifically Lady Myne's property, and using a method to isolate the effect of the Mansion Foundation's influence, they were able to achieve the seemingly impossible. They tested the circle using the large face stone Lady Myne had given them, full of her mana, and at long last, after many trials and tweaks to the circle, it was successfully teleported to the other magic circle in the next room, causing both men to rejoice.
I'll fetch the face stone,
Hartmut said, smiling at the thought that they were so close to success.
After that, we can test the circle's range. Maybe we should place the other teleportation circle at the far end of the garden. Oh, maybe we can also test it on the Fey Beast.
That seems like a good idea.
Fortunately, it was a beautiful day outside. The sun was bright and warm, and there was only the most gentle of breezes rustling the leaves. It almost felt like spring. And although most of the trees had shed their leaves for the season, the gardens, especially the topiaries, remained a delightful sight. Hartmut had never explored the grounds before, but he couldn't help but imagine how stunning the gardens must be in spring and summer. As they turned the corner, they were surprised to find Lady Myne reclining on a garden chair, peacefully asleep with an open book resting on her chest. They must have made a sound, or she must be a light sleeper, because all of a sudden she startled awake, and upon seeing them, let out a small high-pitched noise of surprise. The two scholars quickly made their excuses, apologizing for disturbing her afternoon rest, and explaining the reason why they were out in the garden in the first place. She blinked at them owlishly, and, as if realizing she was not in any danger, before finally relaxing. Meanwhile, one of her attendants came running back in a panic, carrying a blanket. The moment the girl realized what had happened, she began apologizing profusely for having left her so long unattended. The goddess smiled.
Don't worry, Feline.
They made their excuses and were about to leave her to her repose, but instead of going back to her book and her nap, she got up and joined them to witness firsthand how they tested the circle and whether it worked at that range. They explained how it had been successful transferring the face stone, but now they needed to test it on a living being. When she looked at the cream-colored shoe mill that Bernard had tucked away in his sleeve, the goddess's excitement turned to anxiety.
You poor precious thing!
She exclaimed as she took the little creature from Bernard's hands and showered it with kisses, her voice soft and tender as she cooed over it, momentarily transforming into a caring, gentle soul instead of the dignified goddess she was known to be.
Lord Bernard, I feel simply awful that we must do this to her, but if she makes it, I want to keep her. May I?
Bernard grimaced, his expression troubled.
Unfortunately, it belongs to my daughter. She would be devastated if it disappeared.
Lady Myne looked appalled.
You want to use your daughter's pet as a test subject? How could you be so cruel? Poor Philippa, what will you do if something happens to her pet? No, you must not do this.
Bernard rubbed the back of his neck, wearing a sheepish expression.
Well, I guess I have as much confidence in that teleportation circle wouldn't work. I mean, Hartmut magic circles are truly a work of beauty.
Upon receiving the unexpected compliment, Hartmut's eyes widened, and the goddess turned her gaze toward him.
Well, if that is the case, I thank you, Hartmut, for your dedication to this project. Bernard has spoken highly of your contributions lately,
she remarked, her tone measured.
It is truly my pleasure to be of service. If there is anything else you require, I am at your disposal.
Hartmut replied, his eagerness seeping through his words, a realization that made him wince internally. The goddess's gentle smile didn't quite reach her eyes as she spoke.
Well, there is one more test we need to perform to see if the teleportation circle will work on a living being.
Hartmut blinked, meeting her pointed gaze. He grasped the full He grasped the full implications of her suggestion. By asking him to test the transfer circle on himself first, before experimenting with a fey beast or any other living creature, she was subtly implying that she valued the cream-colored animal in her arms more than him. The realization stung deeply. Logically, he knew a functional teleporter wouldn't activate if it couldn't transfer things or people. However, even with the minimal risk of catastrophic failure, it wasn't non-existent. Stories circulated of people disappearing into eternal voids or pocket dimensions, never to be seen again, sending a shiver down Hartmut's spine. Clutching the cream schummel close to her chest, the goddess looked up at Hartmut. Her golden eyes held a blend of expectation and anticipation. Two realizations struck him. She was remarkably tiny. How could someone be so diminutive wield such immense power? Secondly, Hartmut had no way out. He had to be the one to test it. After all, he had designed the circle, and her trust in him remained fragile. Maybe, just maybe, this was her way of getting back at him for his actions at the tea shop. With a deep breath, Hartmut steeled himself for what lay ahead. Summoning his courage, he met her gaze with a determined expression.
Very well. Allow me to demonstrate it,
he said, his voice steady despite the nervous flutter in his stomach.
You're awfully quiet this evening,
Dolores said after dinner that day. He always visited the family home on Earth days, and today was no different. But he had a lot to think about, and so he'd been rather absent-minded all throughout dinner.
You know,
Hartmut said.
I can't get a read on her.
Dolores frowned.
Who?
The goddess, Lord Eckhart's water goddess.
Dolores rolled her eyes and scoffed.
Her again? I swear you're obsessed with her. Are you sure you don't have a raffle for her?
Hartmut gave her a look.
Never mind. It's no use talking to you.
Dolores changed the subject and soon after proudly demonstrated her progress on the Hartspiel. Distracted, Hartmut listened with only half an ear, earning him an irritated scowl from his sister. But instead of engaging in another argument, he chose to leave for home shortly after. However, as he settled in bed and closed his eyes, the image of the young and vulnerable goddess sleeping in the garden lingered in his mind. She appeared no older than Dolores, and it astounded Hartmut how someone who looked so young and frail bore the weight of such immense responsibilities on her slender shoulders. Yet despite her youth and vulnerability, she possessed enough power to crush 3 fully grown archnobles. The lady was a walking contradiction, especially when he considered what had happened after he had tested the teleportation circle. There had been genuine relief in her eyes when he had safely teleported from the circle in the office to the one in the garden. She'd almost looked like she'd wanted to cry, and after they demonstrated that the circle could transfer up to 2 people at a time, as long as it was anywhere within the bounds of her property, and after they had concluded that the project was a success, she invited them both to tea in a part of the house he had never been allowed in before.
Celebrate the project's success,
she said, happily inviting them to tea, which was actually more of a lavish lunch than anything else. Back in his bed, Hartmut sighed. Despite his wrongs, did this mean she didn't want harm to befall him? It should have given him hope, a chance at redemption. Instead, it stirred an uneasy feeling within him. For days he found himself disturbed, although he couldn't quite fathom why. Even when she approached him with a new project, to create a magic tool capable of reading books aloud, he still couldn't fully immerse himself in the task, nor shake off the uneasy feeling gnawing inside him. Then came the day of the salon's reopening. Although it was a woman's affair and the rest of the goddess's scholars had the day off, Hartmut conveniently found a reason to go to work. He felt a duty to support his sister and be present for Dolores' performance. Despite mastering her song, Dolores had been a nervous wreck the day before the event. Hartmut couldn't abandon her. He had to show up and offer his support. To his surprise, the turnout was impressive. Almost 100 women, counting their attendants, all from the highest echelons of society were present. The well-attended party seemed to be a result of Lady Elvira's unwavering support. It was no secret that when it came to the goddess, Lady Elvira was backing her all the way. This was especially remarkable, as Lady Elvira hadn't done even half that much for Hartmut's sister. A noble-born woman and the fiancé of Lady Elvira's own son. Despite having at one point been accused of being too status-conscious, Hartmut had to admit that, after learning more about the goddess's commoner background and her rise to the noble world, he could almost understand Lady Elvira's preference, and Hartmut felt chagrined at the thought that he and other nobles with far more opportunities, education, and resources could never dream of accomplishing half as much as she had in a few years, and in their entire lifetimes. His sister certainly had reason to worry. The realization hit him as he observed the goddess, adorned in a bejeweled gown, capturing everyone's attention. She exuded regality, embodying the essence of a queen, or rather, the goddess that she was. Watching from the periphery of the room, hidden behind potted plants and flowers, Hartmut felt his mouth go dry and his knees weaken. Reflecting on the first time he laid eyes on her and the profound impact it had on him, he had to acknowledge, maybe for the first time ever, that his sister might have been right. His obsession wasn't merely about the power of her mana or her formidable strength. It stemmed from a sick and feverish fixation, as if the goddess had cast a spell on him from the very moment their eyes had met. He needed to go to her. He needed to be near her, to hear her voice. He drew near her and was struck by the sparkle in her eyes, the blush of her cheeks, and the joy in her countenance as she received stacks of papers and old books. Odd, but whatever the reason, Hartmut could no longer deny it. He had never seen anything so beautiful in his eyes. He was dancing in the hands of Blue Anfa, and there was nothing he could do about it. Over the past few days of working closely with her, he had gradually ceased to see Lady Myne as a distant, cold goddess, someone to be dissected and investigated like some freak specimen. Each glimpse of her vulnerability, every smile, every moment she appeared so young and defenseless shattered the illusion further. As her clear voice rang through the room, he came to the realization that she, and no other woman, had brought him to this point. And Hartmut admitted to himself at long last that if given the chance, he would gladly kiss the ground she stepped on and worship her, not as a goddess, but as a woman. And then he witnessed her blessing, and all such foolish thoughts fled from his mind forevermore. No mere woman, no matter how charming, could bring down the power of the gods upon them in such a manner. A yellow, golden light swelled within her ring before soaring into the air, spinning around and then scattering across the solarium like blessed rain. Hartmut had seen many blessings before, but never quite like that one. The light seemed to sparkle with life as though it were truly from the gods themselves. What a beautiful spectacle! A sight not meant for mortal eyes. And in the center of it stood the goddess herself, the avatar of Mestionora, the goddess of wisdom, deigning to appear in a humble human guise as the shining hope for this dark and uncertain time, had descended from the heights to bestow light and wisdom to the faithful. Amidst the chaos of the salon, Hartmut slipped away unnoticed. As he walked, a sudden warmth spread through his chest, and his eyes welled up as everything clicked into place. It finally made sense why he'd always felt a profound emptiness, why life seemed purposeless, and why he'd felt an instant connection to the goddess from the moment he'd laid eyes on her. They were destined to meet, and he was destined to serve her forevermore. But now, the challenge was figuring out how to tell her about his revelation and convince her to accept him as one of her own, convince her that he could be trusted. Well, he figured that he'd have to spend a lifetime proving his devotion to her, and he was more than willing to do so, which was why, in this heightened state of bliss and joy, he made the announcement to his family at the first opportunity. He was leaving Lady Charlotte's service and joining Lady Myne's.
You traitor!
Dolores spat, her voice quivering with rage, tears streaming down her flushed face.
Why does everyone abandon me for that girl? And now you too? How could you? How dare she?
Hartmut, desperate to defuse the situation, pleaded with his parents to leave them alone. As they departed, he attempted to explain, but Dolores' rage was an unyielding storm, and for long moments all Hartmut could do was weather it.
I will never forgive her.
Dolores declared at long last, her anger spent but her hurt still raw.
She can take Lady Elvira's favor, seize precedence in society, become everyone's darling, but I will not forgive her for taking you.
Exhausted from her emotional outburst, Dolores sagged against Hartmut. Thank goodness he was standing against the wall, able to bear almost all her body weight as she leaned heavily against him.
Hartmut, answer me this at least, and don't you dare lie to me,
she said, pulling back a little and raising her eyes to meet his.
Does the goddess of sprouts dance? Do you harbor a raffle for another man's concubine?
And if I did?
Hartmut said, safe in the knowledge that he would never again make the mistake of confusing his devotion for something so trivial as carnal desire or romantic attachment.
Then,
she replied with a low growl, looking every bit like a lioness.
I will this very night steal into that mansion of hers and with my very hands squeeze out her last breath for taking what is mine and mine alone.
Hartmut flinched, shocked. The meaning of her words hung in the air as he stared at the glittering, ruby-red eyes of the girl he had long considered his little sister. What a day of shocking revelations! First with Lady Myne, and now with Dolores? Dolores, his beloved pet, his darling plaything, the one being in this world to whom he could show tenderness and kindness. Was that how she saw him? What about Cornelius? Hartmut opened his mouth to ask, but before he could speak, she grabbed him by the collar, pulled him toward her, and pressed her lips to his. Hartmut went cold with shock, but luckily it was a rather short and clumsy kiss. If something so forceful, and between siblings too, could even be called a kiss. She broke it with an uttered oath before she violently shoved him away and against the wall. Then she whirled around, and without sparing another glimpse at him, strode out of the room and left him alone with a great many questions and a terrible sense of foreboding.
What the hell?
End of chapter. Other notes, sorry for the delay, and a thank you to my friend JC Fergie for proofreading this chapter.
Magpie, you are killing me! You are killing me!
So, I hope that's a good killing since you are a Hartmut stan.
I love this chapter, but at the same time, you're killing me. So in the same breath, he realizes that he has a raffle for her and he's in love with her as a woman. And then in the same sentence, she shows her divinity and he's like, nah, I'm sorry, I was mistaken.
Yes.
My bad. I'm gonna move on.
Yes, yes, that's exactly what
She is
happened.
too good for me. I cannot take this one as my own.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. Feelings change. He was trying, all this chapter, he was trying to define trying to figure out why he was feeling this thing. It was him just wrestling. Is it attraction? Is it just curiosity? It turns out it's just feverish, zealotly devotion. It's just that. So, yeah. Crusher says, yes, give me kiss. So yeah, yeah.
Yes, give me kiss.
She's a broken. Oh gosh, I can't believe I did this.
Yes, Broken. I have a new one.
You have a new one, yes.
Yes, when this story was just starting, like for us to read along, and you were saying no, I'm against any kind of incest, and like I was laughing inside because I just read like this chapter, and I was like, she's such a liar. Magpie is such a liar.
Well, okay, so
Yes,
I knew from early on. I had a hunch.
sorry, Patrick, and then
I was just gonna say yes. I am against all forms of incest, as I currently write incest.
Exactly.
all right. So you guys, so again, just as Hartmut is kind of like was trying to figure out his feelings in this, Dolores is the same way. Okay, so it's not like I think she's more like angry that Myne keeps taking things from her. So it's not just a romantic thing. She's also trying to figure things out. Okay, so don't get too excited. We still have more interludes ahead, especially from Dolores' POV, which we'll pick up after this. Next time when we read, we will be reading that chapter. It's 2 chapters that kind of give us a little bit more light on Dolores, why she's the way she is, and her backstory. But yeah. She is definitely figuring things out. Just Fergie says broken, more like broken. Yeah, we have to see a little bit of Dolores before we can really jump into she's in love with Hartmut or whatever, or no, she has issues of her own. And I know a lot of people hated her when I was writing this, and I get it, but hopefully you can understand a little bit more with her backstory. They're not siblings, they're just adopted siblings. They're not even step siblings. They're just adopted. So
they can get married.
I mean,
Yep, in canon, as we have discussed before, Magpie, that does mean that they are viable marriage candidates.
Yes, okay, yeah. You're okay, so you're right. Are you happy there? Are you happy now? Tia says she's like
I am
angry.
very happy.
They see each other as siblings.
Huh?
Like they're growing up together.
So I take it you guys are shipping them. Are you guys shipping them?
No.
No? Okay, so who's a no? Akihana said no? Okay.
I'm a definite
I'm
no.
on the edge.
Okay.
I ship
Kind of on
it.
the edge.
Put it in the books. I ship it. I'm for
I
That's
mean,
not me.
I've noticed from earlier on when we saw how she reacted to Hartmut. Hartmut first working in under Rosamine. No, I'm not Rosamine, but rather under Myne's workshop. The way she acted, it did not seem like how a sister would react. So I said, broken much? I said broken here, and then yes, it's confirmed she's a broken.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's complicated because again, in this world, things tend to get a little gray area with like siblings, step siblings, adopted siblings.
I did make a few jokes in the chat about the love triangle becoming a square, but I don't see Hartmut being anything more than a retainer to Myne.
Okay, I'm glad we got that settled, you guys. I don't want you guys to hold out hope that this will be a love square. It's not. It's just not. I don't think I have the skills to maintain a love square. So if that's your hope, sorry, go write your fanfic, a fanfic of the fanfic.
Yes, that's what I have to do.
There was a point.
Huh?
There was a point during today's narration that I was thinking, is this going to turn into a love square? But then the blessing happened, and nope, not a love square at all.
That's right.
Back to being the maniac.
Yes. I was hoping that you guys would be kind of like.
He's a maniac, maniac on the
Don't
floor.
worry.
That is exactly the roller coaster I wanted to take you guys in. Yeah, Yukihime?
Yeah, no, don't worry. Also, Magpie, don't look too much into the chat, into the YouTube chat, because I might have gone insane over there. But like what I
Just a
said
little bit.
still stands. Yeah, just a little. It still stands. I am going to draw fan art.
Please draw the
Well,
fan
more
art by
fan
all
art.
means. I love
Yes,
fan arts.
Hartmut. I don't know if you love
You,
this
you
art.
might be
This
surprised
fan
though
art.
at what kind of fine art it is.
Yeah, it depends.
I love Fergie's comment says, when I asked everybody, do you guys ship them? You guys were like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, shipping them out of the country gate so they can't hurt me. Oh my god. All right. So Hartmut is basically, he had his trials. So it's kind of fitting though that I think in Short Story Collection 3, we get the story of Hartmut and how he was made to sign a contract with Ferdinand in canon. So, yeah, I had already read that because I think that was a purchase privilege. So I kind of like took a little bit from that, took a page from that, and I made this. So even in this week, he has to account for things in you know, has to go and meet Ferdinand and be suitably threatened. But I did add a little bit of an extra bit of information. Eckhart was ready, willing, prepared, and expecting to break every bone in Hartmut's body. On top of that, and he really would have done it, and then would have sort of healed him enough to just allow him to walk out of there. They wouldn't kill him. So at least there was that reassurance from Eustace that they wouldn't kill him, but they would break every bone in his body first. So I don't know, I just since we didn't get to have any Eckhart in this chapter, just wanted to give you guys a little glimpse of him there. But yeah, so for now we're gonna be for the next 2 chapters, I think we're just going to be focusing on interludes. So sorry if you are going to be missing out on Eckhart and Myne, but we're gonna give him a break for now. So next chapter.
I'm curious. Sorry, I'm curious. Like, how does Eckhart see Hartmut's growing fanaticism and stuff? Like, how aware is he, or he's just like, nah, this guy is bad news somehow?
You'll see. Well, we'll go back to it a little bit. They will talk about it. He will mention Hartmut's in future chapters. Yeah. All right. So, but you have to read and find out later. Actually, we also did have a glimpse in one of the chapters before. Remember, this interlude covers all the events from the moment from chapter, I think it was, let me see, the competition, and it was covers events from chapter 29, which is like when like way a long time ago, to the blessing. But after the blessing, then there was also talk when Eckhart at some point, I don't know if you guys remember, she was talking about something that Hartmut had done. She was working on some stuff, and then Eckhart's like, yeah, you're kind of like just forgetting all the stuff that he has done because he's working on all these random tools that you want him to work on. And she's like, maybe. So he's noticing that the fact that that Myne is kind of lowering her guard, and he doesn't appreciate that. So he has mentioned that. I think it was like a few chapters ago or a few read-alongs ago that we had that. He was like, yeah, I don't appreciate you talking about him, but another man or whatever. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't like it, but we'll get a little bit more of that later. But yeah, so that's the major thing about this chapter, just Hartmut, and kind of basically, even in this weeb, he is going to be a zealot, and I'm here for it. I love it. All right. So you guys, that covers.
I was just
Oh, yeah.
thinking. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
About how Dolores is all like, oh, she's stealing everything from me, and here I was hoping that Cornelius get on the good side of mine.
Cornelius. So, yeah. Well, we'll see about Cornelius. So we got Hartmut has kind of seen the light. He is willing to pay back for all the damage, and he is, he has changed his mind. Dolores, though, is another story. She said that she would steal it. This is how violent this girl is. She would steal into her house and then strangle her at night for having taken Hartmut. Like, yo, girl, tone it down. And then there's
They're
Cornelius.
supposed to be living together.
Not yet. This is not yet. So this happened before that. Yeah. So this happened. So this chapter covers up to let's see. Hold on.
If anything happens while Myne is staying at the Linkberg estate, I'm blaming Karstead.
Oh boy. So
Yes.
so yeah, this chapter only goes up to a spectacle. It says chapter 55. So anything afterwards, it doesn't cover. So let's see. Yeah, when he said Dolores felt the world spin dangerously around her, it was like the world had gone insane, and without Hartmut to help her make sense of it, she was lost. So that's when he said he broke the news to his family that he was going to wanted to work for her. Then that's when they started fighting, and then right after this, she kissed him and ran away. So I just didn't put it in this chapter, but yeah, if you go back to chapter 55, it kind of picks up into that.
Right on the lips.
A very sisterly kiss. Yeah, she's trying to figure herself out. She also doesn't know if she feels like unconsciously. She probably doesn't know what kind of attachment she has for Hartmut. But remember, she oh shoot, you guys haven't read the interludes. Well, the interludes will make things a lot clearer. Okay, just saying. I think another thing that I want to point out, and I kind of saw it really quickly, was Charlotte. So Charlotte, again, she has taken on kind of like Myne's way of working. She interacts directly with the people, but that was only because she used to be Myne's pen pal. When Myne was in the temple, like they were pen pals, kind of. Like they would talk and write to each other about business and kind of like that. So Myne told her, like, hey, you probably should be talking more about to the people, like be more involved in the duchies. And so Charlotte did. She did take her word to heart. So that's why she kind of her style of leadership when it comes to the industries, it resembles Rosamine's, because she got that advice. All right.
Oh, so I thought that part was Charlotte was just an image for the public. But she really did.
Yeah, she
talked with the merchant guild.
Yeah, she did. So in a way, so yeah, Myne is very involved with the industries and stuff, but she kind of had to like remain in the shadows for a lot of it after some years, because just to keep her safe, I guess. But Charlotte did go into like the industry, and because Charlotte was taking credit for everything that Myne did, remember? She was also in touch with Myne a lot, so she's pretty knowledgeable about the industries as well. All right, so yeah, we got Hartmut's perspective. I hope you enjoyed it. We will pick up on Monday a Dolores POV. It's a fun one, I hope. 2 chapters worth, but they are good chapters if you want to get into the psyche of this Brocon girl. Or maybe she's not a Brocon, who knows? Is it 2 chapters? Yeah, it is 2 chapters for this interlude, I think. No, I think it's 3 chapters for the Dolores interlude. I don't know if we'll be covering all 3, but we will definitely be doing at least 2. All right, everybody. thank you so much for joining us. We're going to end the read along here. I hope you join us on Monday. I want to say a huge thank you to Yukihime, who read Myne, JC Fergie, who read Ferdinand, Cornelius, and Bernard. Bernard, I like that. It was a fun one. Emmy, who read Eustace, and also Christoph and Hartmut's attendance. Good job, Emmy, on doing all those roles. And also Teal, who did Dolores. That was a good Dolores. Oh yeah, especially when she got angry and she wanted to strangle someone. Patrick, who did Hartmut. And let's see, who else? I think that's everybody. Thank you for all of you who read and for all of you who joined us today. We'll see you on Monday. And if you want to have more of this, you can join us on my Discord server by becoming a monthly supporter on Ko-fi. And also we have on Tuesdays, we have Mondays we have read-alongs for Hannelore, Mondays or Sundays, and then Tuesdays we have chit-chats for Hannelore. And also we have Christmas events, so join us. We look forward to having you there. All right, everybody, take care. Say goodbye, gang.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.